I'm going to bring in our next set of panelists. And there we go. They should be joining in shortly. And while they do that, again, it is my honor to introduce our next facilitator. She is Amanda Knox, who is an exoneree, a journalist, a public speaker, and an author. She hosts the Scarlet Letter Reports from Vice and Facebook, The Truth About True Crime on Sundance AMC, and Labyrinth through iHeartRadio. She is also a featured contributor to crimestory.com. She's become an amazing friend to my family and myself, Amanda Knox. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, let's see. We've got everybody on board here. And I will let Amanda take it away. I'm going to turn off my video.
Hello, everyone. Does everyone see me and the harsh lights behind me aren't terrible to look at? So I'm so thrilled and honored to be here alongside my co-panelists. This panel is about fighting, or whatever you do when you're not fighting, really. So what brings me to the table is I spend much of my personal and professional life dealing with some really difficult material. I'm a criminal justice advocate, which means that I am consistently wrapping my mind around the horrible things that human beings do to each other, whether through criminal activity or through criminal justice activity. I spend a lot of time thinking about victims of crime and the criminal justice system, and it's pretty heavy, and you have to do a lot of work to not go insane. So that's why I'm here today. I would love to invite Christian to maybe tell us about why she's here today.
Yeah, I'm Christian Shook, and I hope you guys can hear me. If I have an echo, please let me know and I'll do what I can to fix it. I'm here today because I love people. My whole life has been raised in an environment that people are very important and we need to honor and care for them and support them any way we can. So from a very young age, I was going into nursing homes with my mother and being an advocate, as she was an advocate for the elderly. And I would go in and hand out books, and read books and things like that. And as I got older, I started to understand the things that I was passionate about. And I'm very passionate about equality. I'm very passionate about standing up for people who've been facing injustice. So for the last 2 to 3 years, that's really taken on more meaning. Probably 10 years ago, I started for fighting against human trafficking and worked with several people and organizations and still a part of that process, but especially the injustice facing the teens and the youth and the LGBTQ community in Seattle, Washington. And through that, this last summer, really getting heavily involved in understanding what's happening to Blacks in the justice system and in the with police brutality and what's really happening. And so I've been a part of the marches pretty much from, I think, probably the third day, and with supporting in the marches with food and care and love and showing up. So I've been a part of making sure that people don't forget that there are names tied to police injustice and there are families tied to police injustice, and really fighting for reforming the police system.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian. I'd also like to invite the doctor. I'm a Doctor Who fan, so I might have to call you the doctor, but this is Dr. Vernette. She has a combined experience of 15 years in psychology, in kinesiology, mindful meditation, and Pilates. She has a deep hunger for learning and experience, and it has inspired her to have a deeper approach to the process of natural healing. I was wondering, Doctor, if you would be willing to tell us a little bit about why you're here.
Yeah, sure. So Dr. Vernette, you can call me Vernette, that's fine. I have a doctorate in chiropractic, and I work specifically with teaching people how to own their own health. And so specifically, you know, in the context of our conversation that we're having today, I have dove a little bit deeper into birth work and how to show up as an advocate for birth inequities. And especially being based in Atlanta, we are one of the highest cities that have high maternal mortality rates in the BIPOC communities. And so specifically, I show up as a healthcare professional, but also as an educator, both in the clinical aspect of it, but, you know, do more hands-on things with childbirth education. I show up as a labor doula, as an advocate for a woman or a person identifying as a birthing person transitioning into their pregnancy journey, what they need to be doing to make sure that they're reducing the risks of, you know, high risk pregnancies, and then also how to transition them into, you know, new parenthood. And so, you know, the surrounding communities that we have in Metro Atlanta are really, really protective of our birthing parents. And so today I'm excited to join you all and kind of talk about what does social justice look like, especially in the birth world and the healthcare system.
Awesome. So I think all of us know that because we're dealing with different versions of justice, that means that there are different versions of injustice in the world that we're pushing back against. And I was hoping that maybe we can start by talking about, the previous group talked about boundaries. And clearly, when you're facing an injustice, you need to create a boundary for yourself. And what does putting up a boundary between yourself and an injustice mean? And how is it that you broach that boundary in order to encounter or approach that injustice?
Yeah, so I guess I can start. So when we talk about boundaries, my definition of boundaries and setting boundaries is knowing what is okay and what is not okay for you. I think it's different for everyone, and respecting that individual's ability to set their boundaries and know what it is and be able to identify it and communicate it is a really good start to emotional, mental, physical health. As far as, you know, the environment that we're in right now, and wanting to be a participant for advocacy and for having a voice for injustice, I think if we're able to channel what we're willing to take in, know what that capacity looks like, what that bandwidth looks like, and I'll give an example in a minute, and then be able to move forward only in what we've given ourselves permission to move forward in, and then be able to gently step back and kind of restore, reset, and kind of rejuvenate. So for instance, again, I'm based in Atlanta, and so we had a lot of protests, both peaceful and not so peaceful. We've also, you know, are known for the particular shootings that were happening specific to the color of, you know, a male skin. And so with Atlanta being so passionate, we can sometimes get so involved in having that voice and giving all of that energy that as a person that identifies as Black, it can be very taxing and very exhausting, you know, when we're going into the workplace or we're going into, you know, a social environment where we don't get to take off, you know, our skin color. We don't get to take off our identity. So it almost feels like we're constantly fighting and constantly having that conversation of injustice. So a really good example of that would be, you know, if a person is engaging in social media and or watching, you know, news and being out there, whatever it looks like, to know that you have a time period that you're willing to engage in and know that, you know what, now it's time for me to step back. No, I don't want to have these conversations anymore. I really just want to take some deposits on a daily basis, especially in the environment that we're in now, to be able to restore kind of our soul, our mind, and how we're grounded.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about you, Christian? Do you have
I
any
definitely
thoughts?
agree. Amanda and I had in a check-in talked about that as well, about how, for me, I was going every single day. As soon as I get off work, I'd be at the protests all night. I would come home, get sleep. With the moments where after the tear gassing, after the kettling, just the emotional toll of going through that on my body really start to show up, where things that normally shouldn't happen to you, like your gums shouldn't be getting loose. Like that's the, just stress things that you're like, oh, maybe I should take a moment. And I ended up going on vacation in the middle, well, I left Washington or spoke Seattle and went to another part of the state, and like the helicopters went by one night and I was like turning and looking to see like where the police were at and like how quickly are they going to be coming around the corner. And I was like all like flight mode, and my body was saying like, you know what, this is a safe place, like you can actually calm down. And then so after that time away from Seattle, I came back and I made the decision that for me, my boundary is I can only do one protest or rally a week. And I can commit to that one night, that one group, that particular group of people who are organizing it. And that was it, and nothing else. And even there was an event about a week ago that I got invited to that was for that Friday night rally. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there. But then Saturday rolled around like, oh, I'm sorry, I actually can't be there because I really need to hold to, for my mental health and my emotional health, to that one day. And I also realized for my spiritual health, I needed to do that, because there were times where I would just, even the thought of, and I'm going to say this, and I do want everybody to kind of hear, because it's going to kind of understand kind of the boundary that I made. I was starting to get to the point that when a white person would ask me a question about Black lives, I was to the point of like, have you even looked online? Like I was just so like beyond stressed that I realized, oh, your bandwidth right now for educating people who are new to this is full. And so, so then I started like, hey, why don't you do some research on your own, and then we can come back and we can have conversations. And it took me a while to be able to say that kindly, because at first I was very much of like, seriously, I have to say this again. But then I realized, it's probably that first person's first time reaching out to me to ask that question. So, but my boundary was still like, right now I can't do first conversations. I can help you on the 5th and 6th conversations. So that is just was like, hey, here's a resource. That's my boundary. Hey, here's a website. That's my boundary. So there's boundaries look so different in each one of our lives, and especially looks different every day for what we're encountering. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking also, a really good thing that you bring up, Christian, is how not everyone's at the same place as you are, especially when you're like deep in something that you spend so much time in. Like I find this all the time with my own work, where I'm having conversations with people, the really, really challenging conversations with people about child sex trafficking, and like bringing that to the dinner table with my mom is not always like dinner table conversation. And because I also have to recognize her boundaries. Now, one thing that like I've actually literally tattooed on myself, and I'll try to like pivot so you guys can see, but this is my boundary symbol actually. So I've tattooed these literally on my mind, because these are the things that I do my work with. This is my work. I write. This is how I communicate. This is like me communicating with the world, is with my hands. And this symbol is the resistor symbol. It is for electrical engineering, and it literally just means all of the energy that comes in and all of the energy that goes out it's not all of it, it's just some of it. So I only want to let in the energy that is positive, and I only want to put out the energy that is positive. And in the way that I try to do that is through these principles, which I'm sorry, again, they're kind of like far away. But the first one is a Venn diagram. So find common ground. This is a helmet. It means like steel man. So like try to really understand the other person's point of view so that you can like actually talk to them about it. have compassion, and be willing to change. So those are like my sort of ways that I try to have a productive boundary when I'm encountering people, but also sort of have a boundary for myself where I know like I am going to be approaching a lot of people with a lot of new ideas that they don't have the lived experience that I do to understand. So like, how do I be productive by understanding my own boundaries and other people's boundaries? That sort of like brings us into our next question, which is, like you said, Dr. Vernette, sometimes you can't turn it off, or sometimes you can't take it off. So what do you do if you can't take it off? How do you turn it off? Do you?
That's a really good question. And a little bit about my personal life. I am remarried, and I'm remarried to a white man. Not only is he a white man, he's conservative, and he's from Montana. So there are a lot of things that we have differences in our lenses and our perspectives. And I think that's what makes us a very dynamic partnership. But, you know, it also had brought up some interesting conversations that were emotionally hijacking for me that I didn't realize would be so hijacking, especially, you know, surrounding around someone that I care about, but then also just the level of frustration because he was a new person to this whole conversation. And it was like, listen, I have to deal with this on a regular basis. I don't want to come home and have to unpack everything that I already unpacked to the next person. And so I just need you to do your own work right now. So that way, when you have context about white privilege and what that looks like, feels like, we can have a more in-depth conversation. And so, you know, when you're, and I share that because, you know, this is somebody that is very intimate with me, right? This is my chosen person. And so I was able to figure out very quickly that I have to learn how to create safe spaces even within my home. And it's not that I don't have unsafe spaces, but, you know, having somebody that I've chosen to share my life with, and I also have Black children from a previous relationship, that, you know, they don't get to take their skin color off either. So it's like, how do I figure out this dynamic of advocating for myself, being strong for myself as a mother, as a birth worker, you know, seeing and having these conversations with mothers that are terrified to go into the healthcare system and know that they are at their most vulnerable state and they're trusting a non-Black person to take care of them, knowing that our statistics are showing that we don't have optimal chances of life and vitality in the care of our healthcare system. And so to answer your question, how do I turn it off, or even do I turn it off? Absolutely. What that actually looks like is, so my husband, I've known him for several years as a friend. And so he jokes as if I have all of these different shades, which I do, right? He knows if I'm talking to a coworker versus I'm talking to my girlfriend, or I'm talking to a family member. So my tone and inflection will change. We call that coding, right? And so, you know, for him to see it firsthand and, you know, for him to embrace it, I think is such a great thing. But he understands when I get into a mindset of I'm turning everything off. I don't, and he's huge in politics or the political conversation. I don't want to talk about that. You can talk about that with your friends. Right now in this space, in our home, I want to watch something on TV that I don't have to mentally prepare myself for trauma or for a trigger or anything like that. I want to watch something that brings me joy. So usually it's probably a Disney Channel movie or something that's nice and fluffy. Other things that I typically do is, you know, I have scents that work really well for my calmness because I am prone to anxiety. That sandalwood, I burn incense, like frankincense. I burn sandalwood. I just mentioned that. I've got some other fragrances that kind of call me a little bit, like lavender. I'll put soothing music on. So typical stuff to engage my senses, but also some atypical things, right, that we don't really think about. One thing that I love to do is take showers, right? So I don't take showers every day. I've just never been that person. Maybe I'll go a day without taking a shower. I still do a cleanup. But when I get in a shower, I don't have the lights on, or at least not the bright lights on. I shower with lavender. I make sure that, you know, if I'm washing my hair, especially if I have natural hair, most of us on here have natural hair, so we know how that conversation goes with making sure that we're taking care of our hair. It's a whole hair day. But when I bathe, I'm cleansing not only the physical side of me, but the emotional and spiritual side. What are the things that I need to release? What is the energy that is not serving me to my highest good and grounding me in who I am, that I need to be able to release? So just like, and we'll do this later on in the session because I'll be hosting a meditation session for you, but just like when you think of sitting and meditating and just being still, you don't always have to traditionally sit still in your meditation. You can do things that help put small deposits into your well-being on a regular basis, especially that will prepare you for those emotionally hijacking moments or those triggers that may come up, whether they're planned or unplanned. So that's kind of a little bit of an insight of what I do to try to turn it off any way that I can, and still be able to show up in my best self, for myself, for my clients, and also for my kids.
Great. Christian, what do you have to offer or give us your wisdom?
I'd say the same. It's pretty similar. I call it being on, when I'm on and when I'm off. A lot has to do with just being so much on stage, when I'm on stage and when I'm off stage. And usually it's like, oh, if I'm on for hours, and you're on for hours. And in the workplace, being a Black woman in corporate America, you are on, and you're on before you even get to work. You are on from the moment you step out of your house. There was a moment where I was walking to work one day, and I got to work, and one of my coworkers was crying, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. What's wrong?" She's like, "I saw you work, and I couldn't believe it was you because you were upset. You had a frown on." I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, you look so mad and mean." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then I remembered I just passed somebody doing crack cocaine at 7:30 in the morning, and I didn't know how to process. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is right by my work. It's 7:30 in the morning. What can we do? What are all?" So in my head, I'm running through all the things I could do to help this person, but still be at work on time, and all these things. And then I was like, well, you're smoking crack right now, so it's probably not the best thing to actually go in and try to like, hey, can I help you get to rehab type of moment. And so all those things were running through my head, but all my coworker saw was that I was angry and that I was mad. And she couldn't believe that I was actually, she's like, "You just look a different person. It wasn't you." And it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, we always have to be on. We always have to present this package. And it wasn't until Juneteenth at my firm actually listened to me on things that I had been trying to tell them for a year. For a year, I had a coworker who, anytime I braided my hair differently, would come up and pet my hair and run her head down my chest. And I'm just like, "What are you doing?" I slapped her hands once. I was just like, "This isn't, it's not okay. It's not appropriate. This is wrong." And then several people talked to her, and then she gets to the point of like, "I want to touch your hair, but I'm not going to." This was a daily thing. This was a weekly thing. Anytime I'd braid my hair into a different style, she's like, "Ooh, I want to touch it, but I'm not going to." So I'm like, just the anxiety and the stress of walking into that. And I try to talk to them about it, and like, "Well, you just need to learn how to communicate better with her." And I'm just like, but I am. I'm like, "Well, you're just kind of like not really giving her a chance." I'm like, "But no, you don't understand. Like, this is very hard for me. Like, she's touching me. Like, but she's just a very friendly person." And so I gave up. I literally gave up. It was a year ago. Right now, this is the week that I had the final conversation with them, and I gave up. And I was just like, I literally was just like, "You know what? Stay at this job one more year while you finish school, and then bounce, head to another firm." I literally was just like, I was just done. And in that time, they're like, we've never seen you so happy with that person. I was just like, and in my review, like, you were just so amazing. Just the night and day turnaround with this, your coworker. And in the review, I'm sitting there going like, no, you understand. I gave up. Like, and I was so disheartened because they didn't get it. Like, they didn't get that my giving up and realizing they weren't protecting me and it stopped expecting any changes to them was like the most amazing attitude turnaround. It was horrible. And then I saw the raise they gave me and I just laughed all the way home. I was just like, this is insane. And I was like, God, what do I do? Because this is insane. And I don't want this to continue because the next Black person who joins our firm is going to go through this. And we did have another Black person join like within another week. And the whole week I kept on getting emails of like, did you see how hot he is? Did you see we have a Black guy? And I'm just like, are you kidding me? I love my company, but it was one of those things where I think part of the problem is where non-Black people try to show that they're identifying and they're accepting of Black people by saying really stupid things. Like by, trying to incorporate Black culture in their life to show you that they're cool with Black people. So by everybody emailing me that we have a new Black person in the firm, it's like, there we go. No, we see, there's another one. Did you see him yet? Have you talked to him yet? There's like, gosh, this is just so weird and awkward. And it took Juneteenth and the way that our firm approached Juneteenth for me to finally say, we're missing it. We're absolutely missing it. And we have to address things differently. And by going through and talking and revisiting a year of my life at the firm, they're like, we didn't get that's what you were talking about. Like the whole year you had those conversations with, we had no clue that this is what you really meant until we saw Black Lives Matter. Like if we hadn't been home and isolated for 2.5 months, they would not have listened. And they acknowledged that. They're just like, they acknowledged that we have to do things different. And we've changed a lot of our company policies and we've had lots of conversations, but it's one of those things when you can't take off your Blackness. How do you keep your dignity and your Blackness without losing your faith in others? And that's the one thing that this last whole 1.5 years has taught me that, again, sometimes people aren't ready to have that kind of understand the conversation. They're going to be stuck on the first conversation and not even be able to get to understanding why Black Lives Matter because they don't even understand that I don't see color conversations, and that it takes a long time. Like it took 1.5 years for my firm to get it. And from that point, it was just like immediate jump of changing company policy, immediate conversations about race and about race and justice. Immediately they got it. And immediately they started doing things for 800 people at our firm every other week throughout the entire summer. So that is the good thing that they didn't lose it. But it's also something as Black women in the workplace we have to deal with of like, how do we approach this every day? So.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for this. I think it's about time for Q&A if anyone has any questions. I do want to acknowledge something here though that we're talking about, which is like, we're talking about issues that sometimes dredge up a lot of negative experiences and emotions that can be super triggering. And when you're an advocate, you really want to be positive and put your best self forward because you're sort of like representing something. And I think that there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves to do that as well. But like one thing that I've found that's been really helpful, and it's interesting because in my own experience, it's not, obvious when people look at me that they know, like, I mean, it is if you watch like The Case and we're like TV and blah, 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 blah. But like, it's not, if you just saw me walking down the street, you wouldn't be like, that bitch has been to prison. Like, you wouldn't know. So like, I have this like weird thing where like, I have like little like triggers that people don't think about because one, they don't really know what would even trigger a prison person. And two, like I'm, it's just, I don't come across as like, I've been to prison. And I found that like something that helps me sort of remind myself that I don't always have to be positive is knowing that like one, bad emotions are information that are useful to me. So I need to pay attention to them and like take a moment to be mindful of them when I notice them so that I can then sort of turn that information into like a productive step forward instead of like 3 steps back. But also to like recognize that even when you're in the midst of your fight, there are different modes of being, right? Like you can be in growth mode where you're like, I am pushing myself into all of these challenges because I'm growing and I'm helping other people grow with me. And other times you're in comfort mode and you just sort of put up a wall that like protects yourself. And then you do something that is like, you don't feel like you have to push yourself to be out there and like help someone else necessarily. Can you guys speak to like those sort of modes of being and like how you sort of get in and out of those modes of being?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll keep mine brief, but I am in the acknowledgement stage of this is the things that I've done to put deposits into who I am, how I want to show up, how I'm grounded. And so, progressing through different stages of, how you want to show up for yourself and for others, especially in advocacy, is really important. And like you said, it's important that if you're in that growth stage, honor what that looks like, hold that space in that particular stage. And so, for me, it is being clear in my communication with non-BIPOC folks that I'm not the token Black girl. I know that I'm in the professional world and we are, connected as friends, but, when we were heavy in trying to figure out, the conversation piece that, Black women and men have been trying to have with our counterparts, being in a stage of peace and honoring that we did not want to show up as that, oh, I know this, I've got this one Black friend, or, I've got this one Black coworker, so let me ask her all the questions. For me, in that particular stage, to give a specific example, I had to be mindful to communicate in a way where I was open to having a conversation, kind of like Christian was saying, like a conversation later on in the game, and just trying to give some resources, but knowing like I am not in that stage of being an educator right now in this arena. I am in the stage of figuring out what is that navigation between wanting to make sure that I'm in a healthy state and still being present for how I need to fight. Right. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but recognizing whatever stage that you're in and honoring that and being unapologetic about it, I think are really good points to mention in whatever stage a person is in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. One thing that has helped me with 2020, I think we can all agree that none of us expected any time in our lifetime for something to go the way that it has. And I'm single, I live alone. And the thing that I've learned the most is that I am not all things at one time. Like I'm not all whole in one area at one time. I'm not always growing totally. There's one part of my heart that's growing. Another part of my mind is moving to another level. So there's, for different issues or different things that I come across, I'm at different levels. And I've really become okay with that. Because I think a lot of the pressure is that we need to be 100 at whatever it is. And I realized that, well, no, we don't learn the same way. We don't grow the same way. Math, I hate math. I'm not a great math person, but I know I'm a great literature person. And there's different ways that I can approach helping myself to be better in each way, in each thing. So it's definitely about realizing our capacity and that it doesn't have to be the same level for everything. because I don't think that's how we grow as humans. I think, you know, we grow, I mean, if we grew 100% of everything inside us all at the same time, I think it would blow our minds. I think we would, and we'd be so exhausted because there's like, there's no break. But when we realize like, oh man, my capacity for love right now is not great. So I need to actually bring more understanding and grow in love in myself and internalize that and how to push that out before it can be back to 100. There's other times where I'm just like, man, my joy level is at 125. And I am like fully understanding that, and I can help other people how to tap into that. So I think there's just, with all our emotions, our understanding, our learning, our capacity, I think it's very multifaceted. And it's okay to be 12% of one thing and at 110% of another. I think it's allowing yourself to be okay with just being human and understanding that it does not look the same for each one of us, because we're so unique. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much. I think Vernette is telling me that we have to stop answering questions. But it's been a joy to be on this panel with you both. Thank you so much for spending time with me.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been great.